This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
I'll be right there. I just got one more drop of bliss to put on. It works pretty fast. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. And we're broadcasting live 2 hours daily from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Studio A. There's a link to all of your instructors on the website, USAPrepares.com. Podcasts on Genesis are free. Just go to USAPrepares.com. If you need to refresh your memory or revisit something that you've heard on this broadcast, just click on the website. And Converging Threads are confronted daily by your instructors. Nathan is producing the worldwide broadcast today. And with us is Dr. Richard Allen Miller. You might know him as the real Fox Mulder of the X-Files. He wrote the first 6 episodes of the X-Files, and he was the lead Navy physicist at the Pentagon. And he's currently a world-class farmer. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is a scientist. He's the author of many books, including ESP Induction through Forms of Self-Hypnosis. Welcome, Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Good morning, Vincent. Good morning.
Hey, Rick, you're pretty quiet this morning.
Well, no. I want to personally thank those donations for helping get my old website back up and running, especially Grace Thorne and several others. They helped me get that process started, and I just personally wanted to thank them for that. You know, my webmaster had died last year, and then my website got hacked. And because of coding problems, it had to get restructured. There was no way we could go in and fix it. We had to rebuild it from scratch because of the way it was hacked.
Well, it's I just took a quick look, Rick. It looks like it's starting to come along fine. Class, that's
yeah,
Richard.
It's going to have a different look, not as much doom and gloom, and there will be some icons. You know, you'll have the red section. That will be on radiation, and that's because it's one of my main primary concerns. You know, there'll be a series of sections on it. It'll be different and more accessible, I think. Easier to find things.
Rick, you've got a section on radiation. Less doom and gloom, huh?
Less doom. Yeah, that's an oxymoron. Sorry. Yeah.
So that's a class. If you'd like to go to the website, it's richardallenmiller.com. Richard, ALANMILLER.com. And if you'd like to get to the website and peruse some of the books that you may want to purchase, oak-publishing.com, oak-publishing.com. Rick, there are a couple of things that I'd like to mention. One of them is we have a post on our website about television and how it can change your accent. So if you watch...
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, well, let me just click on it. It's kind of interesting because it can change the way that you tend to pronounce words. Well, here's where I'm going with this. If television can cause us to buy a $200 pair of sneakers rather than maybe a $50 pair, and if television can induce us to buy things that we would not normally buy, and if television can change our accents and change our way of thinking and sway our votes, well, what about programming the mind to condition us that murder's not so bad? Because if you look at some of the young thugs in the inner cities, they will pull a knife or a gun and kill somebody without hesitation whatsoever. So I'm talking
Some
about...
of that comes from the violence on TV. That has been, for a number of years, why they have parental discretion advised, that kind of thing. It starts with play, where you get a little cap pistol or a water pistol, and you want to be an Indian today rather than a cowboy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I had cat pistols, and I had a couple BB guns, and I had a pellet gun, and I wasn't out there. I'm not out there killing my neighbors.
No, but you do carry a pistol. So
yeah.
You are still armed and dangerous. It's just not as much play as it used to be.
Well, Rick,
but still your divine right.
Right down the road from the farm, there is a Chinese factory outlet, and it's in Marshfield, Missouri. Maybe 20 miles or so from the farm. And it's kind of on the way to Springfield. So if I were going to Ziggy's, I could swing by and stop in at the Chinese factory outlet. Well, a few young ladies were in there, and they were open carrying their pistols. I mean, this is the same one that I go to once in a while, if I have to. I really don't like going to the Chinese factory outlet. But someone saw these young ladies in Walmart with their open carry, perfectly legal, called the cops. The cops were not all that nice. So I'm going to see if I can put the post of that YouTube video on the website sometime today. The bottom line is, I walked in there to buy a automotive battery for our son who had a dead battery. And I stopped there because that particular Chinese factory outlet had this very large size international battery. And I picked it up, and guy saw me at the tire and battery section. He said, "Well, it's a good thing you didn't walk in through the front door. They don't like that stuff, like carrying a gun." And I said, "What are you talking about?"
That? Wanting to buy a battery or carrying a pistol while you're buying a battery?
Well, the latter, carrying a pistol. So I had, I was dressed the way I normally am. Nothing special. I just had my, I always have my 45, right? So I, walked right through the front door. No problem. I mean, I don't brandish this thing.
Think about it that way, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, no one seemed to notice. No one seemed to care, and that's the way it should be. Well, the sales clerk behind the register, a guy, said, it's a good thing that they didn't see me, or I didn't come through the front door, because they would call the cops on me. And I said, there is no posting on the front door that says you cannot carry a firearm in the Chinese factory outlet. So, class, the way it is in Missouri.
Now at Starbucks.
Now, the way it is in Missouri, class, you can carry a handgun, open carry or concealed carry, into any business unless that business posts that you cannot. Of course, you can't bring it into a business that sells alcohol, that kind of thing. Restaurants that have more than 50% of their revenue in alcohol sales. But in churches, unless you have permission, in government buildings. But for the most part, you can carry your gun in businesses in Missouri unless it's posted, at the front door or the entry where you happen to be going in, that you cannot. So what I did was absolutely perfectly legal. What these young ladies did was perfectly legal. But the police gave them a hard time. So I just wanted to share that with you. Bottom line is,
if you were to live here in Oregon, we're, pretty rural. We're way, like you are, where you are right now. And basically, nobody carries a pistol around because it's a retirement community of people from California. And their values and expectations and daily living things would be frightened if they saw someone carrying a hunting rifle or a pistol, or even, it's like carrying a slingshot or something. It's what's your intent with it.
Well,
and,
my intent.
So many people in the world that the intent then becomes an issue. I think the reason Starbucks is making this big ruling about asking people to leave their pistols outside is because the pro-arms people are trying to use them as a political move, and Starbucks doesn't want to be involved in the decisions of yes or no.
Well,
the thing is a very emotional issue, and
it's
has
really simple.
pros and cons, but,
It's really simple. Rick, if I can't defend myself, I'm not going there. Seriously.
Well, that's right. And the pistol is an equalizer. That's the bottom line.
Well,
makes everybody equal.
Yeah, and everybody's more polite, for Pete's sake. Really, I mean,
well,
you
they
think they're
are, concerned. Imagine what it was like in the Wild Wild West when we didn't have any laws, and you just carried your pistol any darn where you wanted to, and even being drunk with your pistol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, speaking of all this, Rick, there was an officer, Randall Carrick, and he was involved in a shooting in North Carolina. Now, here's what happened. There was a man who was driving his vehicle in the early hours of Saturday morning, and he crashed. He crashed his car. And he walked half a mile to a neighborhood where he was pleading for help. The homeowner heard this and called 911 and urged the police, please hurry. You got to come and help. So this man is pleading for help, and the cops show up. The cops show up and kill him. So here's a guy is in a car accident. He walks for help.
Yeah.
24-year-old guy, a football player, and he's black. The homeowner calls 911. The cops show up, and one of the cops discharges 12 rounds. I guess he would have discharged 20 if he had him. But he shoots the guy. He shoots 12 rounds. 10 rounds hit this guy and kill him. Rick, this is absolutely out of control. We need to have gun confiscation. We need to take guns away from the cops. Rick, they're killing us. We are not.
Well, that's what they did in England. They have those kinds of concepts in other countries.
Rick, we are not shooting the police. The police are shooting us.
That's correct.
Really?
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be a policeman walking up to an unknown car that was aberrant in its behavior and not sure what I'm going to find. That's kind of a scary thing, too. You have to see it from both sides.
That's almost as scary, Rick.
It used to be against the law not to carry a pistol because that's what kept England over in England.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. Class, some of the best broadcasting is during the break. Unfortunately, it doesn't go out over the air. But anyway, Rick, Rick, you were talking about you wouldn't want to be a cop or a police officer approaching a car with unusual behavior. But on the other hand, because it might be frightening to the cop. Now, okay, I'll buy that. But also, what's it like when we're approached with 6 police cars, with guns drawn?
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I've been approached by some cops at an event. I've mentioned this a couple times since I've been on the air. I was at a convention, and 3 cops show up in front of me, and they ask me, "Are you Mr. Finelli?" And so, like, what's up? And but what I didn't know was, these guys are all fanned out, ready to shoot me. And one guy's got his left hand on his gun belt. His right hand is right behind his gun, safety off, ready to shoot me. And then behind me, in case they miss, is another cop. So, Rick, actually, I think we really need gun confiscation. Let's get the guns out of the hands of the cops because they are out of control. They're tasing us. They're beating us with batons. They're throwing 130-pound women down or slamming their faces into the patrol cars. They're sniping. They're driving around with vehicles that are, red and maroon and blue and tan. And, they're trying to blend in. Well, why aren't they visible? We're paying them to protect and serve, not to snipe and ticket. Boy, I hit my own button. Bud in Montana, you are on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and me, Vin Finelli.
my brother from another mother. I really do love your program, Vince. I just wanted to tell you about an incident that happened here in Montana, because I carry also. Mm-hmm. And I've been through up here in Montana, we have a really good sheriff. I like him. And I've got to be friends with him, and went through his Sheriff Citizens Academy. He actually puts one on for about 10 weeks. It's really good. I mean, it exposes you to all the aspects of the Sheriff's Department and different stuff, but anyway, I carry, and he knows it, and stuff like that. And I was in the grocery store one day, so and I didn't have a vest on necessarily at that time, and I was just down the milk aisle, and this guy and his wife and this little girl are there, and I'm looking in the same aisle, and this guy kind of looks around and sees that I have a weapon, and he tells his daughter, says, "Better move over, honey. That man has a gun." And I looked at him and I said, "I'll tell you what, partner, you're a lot safer with me having it than me not having it." And he just kind of smiled and kind of got the idea, I think, just a little bit. It was really, I think we got to use every opportunity to open people's ideas in their mind that, it's not only just a constitutional right, but with the right people carrying, it's a wise move to that they're safer than they are without it. All they are if you don't have any.
Is extremely valid, and I absolutely agree with you. When I was in Amsterdam, I watched a couple with their 10-year-old son walk down through the red light district. This is a metaphor. And rather than alarm the child and, "Oh, you can't look at this, George," that kind of thing, they just walked nonchalantly like there was nothing else going on there. And that child will not be probably as neurotic as most of the people are here in America right now with nudity. It's a shame the way we are culturally programmed with very things like that. Your sheriff sounds like it's a very cool. I do like Montana. I think Montana's kind of cool. So, bravo. I think your sheriff's very cool to do what he's doing.
Bud, let me ask you this. Would you kindly send me an email, Vincent@usaprepares.com, with the name of your sheriff and contact information if you could, because I would like to learn more about that Sheriff's Citizens training that he's got. I think it makes a lot of sense. Did you want to stay on past the break?
Sure, I'll stay on. And
all right, and I've got a comment about something that happened to me when I was carrying open in Springfield, Missouri, and I'll tell you that story when we come back. A woman approached me when I was carrying open. We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us, and Bud from Montana has called in. And we're talking about carrying firearms at our side. And I just wanted to mention that I was in Springfield, Missouri at Ziggy's, one of our meetups. And there was a woman sitting, Ziggy's has a very small bar behind a glass wall. And she was there, and I was walking through that area and during the meetup. And so the meetup was in progress, and our speaker was speaking. This woman said to me, she was hostile. She was a middle-aged woman sitting alone at the bar, and she came toward me, leaned toward me, and said, "Do you realize what a small probability there is that you would need that gun?" And I said, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do, and I'm prepared for it." And that was, that was one hostile interaction from her part. There was another one at Ziggy's where one of the patrons in the back room, we were in the front room, we take over the front room, there's a whole bunch of us, and we were packed one night. I mean, maybe we probably exceeded the fire code. And there was this guy screaming at me because I was armed. He got out his cell phone, he was going to call the cops on me. I don't know if he did or not. But he was really hostile. But he was with his girlfriend or his wife, and he was trying to show how macho he was. But obviously he doesn't understand. And the other time that I was in a Chinese restaurant, and I was in line at the counter, and across the restaurant, this man sitting with his wife or girlfriend said to me, "Are you with the Treasury Department?" And I turned around and I smiled and I walked over and I said, "Why do you ask?" And he said, "Well, you're carrying a gun, and it looks like a nice one." and I said, no, I'm not. I'm not. And he goes, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a broadcaster right here in Springfield, Missouri." And he said, "Well, that's really cool. So you're a broadcaster and you're walking around with an open carry." And I said, "Well, it's my duty." And he looked at me and I said, "Well, it is. It's my duty to protect me and my family and even you if something bad were to happen here." And he said, "I'm really glad that you're carrying that firearm." So Bud, those are a couple of my stories. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just had a funny story for you that's kind of interesting, I think. And maybe I'd like to actually get, Dr. Richard Allen Miller's take on this. I think the populace as a whole, Vincent, has been is so dumbed down that, you can't. I understand because I've got a lot of friends that are deputies. And I hear them talk about some of the stupid things, but I'll give you this story and then I'll listen for old Dr. Richard Allen Miller's response off air. This friend of mine is in the grocery store and he works there, and he was stocking the milk, right? This older lady comes up to him and says, she taps him on the shoulder, and he's stocking the milk now, remember that, and she says, "Young man, I want the store milk. Can you show me where the store milk is?" And he kind of looks at her and looks down at his milk and hands and says, "Well, it's right here, ma'am." And she says, no, that milk all comes from a cow. I want the store milk. I kid you not.
That's a great story.
And anyway, Vince, I was going to ask you one other question.
Did you know that in New York, that children don't know where milk comes from?
Sure, I believe that.
Educational reform is so needed now, and our public has been so brainwashed in just, showing where milk comes from. It comes from a bottle. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
There's mind control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Hey, Vince, I was going to tell you, I'm the guy that called you a while back, and I live off the grid. I don't have a computer, but I was wondering, on that Sheriff Citizens Academy, would it be all right if I text it to you on your text line?
That would be wonderful, and I will call your sheriff.
The concept of program is like what Sheriff Mack and some of the others are interested in trying to do is have a different spin on things. It's just the law enforcement are people. They're not like out to get you per se. Oh, yes, that's not true. Budget cuts aside, they do have speed traps. But, it doesn't have to be that way. It's supposed to be a community.
Well, I can tell you, Rick and Bud.
That's why I like Montana, by the way. One of the things about Montana is its ruralness is such. It's like being in a deep snowstorm. It's a hardship, and when you have to endure a hardship with others, it brings you all closer together. I know that when we have a heavy snowstorm, how everybody comes together better and, endures it as a mutual shared hardship. And law enforcement is the same thing. What has happened is that there are so many people from so many different places and values now that the rural community has been lost. And to have that in places like Idaho and Montana, it's wonderful. That's why I live in a rural community. I like that feeling of shared hardship and working together when things go down sideways. Like if we have a flood, everybody's there to help.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Rick
That's
and
what
Bud.
The rural fire department was about. It was a volunteer thing out where I lived up in Washington. That it was a shared hardship. That if someone's house was burning down, everybody showed up to help fix that.
Mm-hmm. Lawrence County, the sheriff Brad DeLay is a constitutional sheriff. had him on the broadcast with us. And I've tried to get our sheriff to allow me to volunteer. I can't get my sheriff to budge in the county where I live. He knows me for 7 years. I've seen him a lot. He's been to the farm. I mean, he really knows who I am. He knows what I do. As a matter of fact, he knows my voice, right? Well, I cannot get a citizens academy. I cannot get a sheriff's auxiliary. I can't get anything going with this particular sheriff. So I'm a volunteer at a county 100 miles from the farm because I can't volunteer in my own county because our sheriff won't let him.
Wow.
That's why, but that's why I asked you for the information to contact your sheriff so I could find out how he's doing it. So maybe we can help enlighten our sheriff. Our sheriff has not come to our expos. He won't come on the radio with me. I can't get him to come to the meetups. Nothing. But anyway, that's, boy, now I'm in trouble because this is going to be rebroadcasted midnight to 2.
All right,
right here. Oh, man, I'm in trouble now
Nice
because
meeting you, by the way.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey, Bud,
Bye-bye.
thanks so much. See you. Bye.
Yeah.
Rick, I'm in trouble now. Seriously, this
You're not in trouble. Actually, possibly, your local sheriff should probably realize that what you're trying to do is make the thing right, and that
that's
he
exactly right.
needs to integrate some new concepts into his worldview.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He really is. But I believe he's using, well, we got insurance problems. And I said, well, I'll just sign a waiver. If I get shot, it's on me. But anyway,
Well, you
Rick,
could be a volunteer in dispatch. My girlfriend, when she retires, always wanted to be a detective. That was one of her unrealized dreams. And, we have volunteering. I volunteer at the Brit for music. There's no reason why you can't do that in terms of a community watch system and or some kind of local infrastructure. I have this article I'm reading right now on how to do that with your local community and setting up a community that supports each other. It's, for when the grid goes down.
well, Rick,
The grid, by the way, is going to collapse.
We'll talk about that.
October 2nd is a planned one in FEMA Region 3, or Washington, D.C. It's supposed to be a 3-day event where they measure the effectiveness of their emergency response. I think
let's
it's going
talk
to be
about
another
that.
false flag for other kinds of things going on, but they're planning to do that October 2nd in that region.
Rick, let's talk about that in just a couple minutes. We've got John from Nixa on with us. John from Nixa, you're on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and me, Vin Finelli.
Hey, Vin. This is John, and I just want to let you know I just made a new friend of the show yesterday. We happened to be in Walmart. The only thing I was in the Chinese factory outlet for was some ammo, and I'd heard that they got a little shipment, so I went by and I was buying some, and I was concealed, so nobody knew that I had anything. But the guy walked up behind me, and he opened, and his gun was wide open and everything, big old holster, big old gun. And so we got to talking, and nobody seemed to care in the Nixa Walmart. And I'm talking to him, and we were discussing the video that was on the web, and anyway, we were just discussing all this, and he actually was saying that the only time that he's ever been hassled, he says he's been carrying a gun on his side for years and years, and the only time he's ever been hassled was at a Taco Bell, and he says it was kind of late in the evening, about 11 o'clock at night, and he says there was a woman, a man, and 3 young children, and he says this guy just opened up on him, just cussing and screaming at him why he had a gun and why he had it in front of his children. And he simply looked at
Imagine
him.
what he was doing to teaching his children how to scream at other people.
Exactly, and that's what he
values.
said. He says, well, sir, the only person here that's making a scene in front of your children is you. It's just kind of that mentality.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, there's a gun, say something. So,
John, I was, and we're talking with John Dollarhide of Dollar Value Computers. He's a USAPrepares.com instructor right here in the Springfield community. His store is in Nixa, Missouri, and you can find him on the website, USAPrepares.com, page 1 at the bottom under instructors. John, you and your family has been threatened by the federal government and threatened with a fine of $6.19 million for raising rabbits. So I just want to make sure everybody knows who you are. John, I was And Rick, I was at Harbor Freight in Springfield, Missouri, and I was walking to my car after I made my purchase, and this truck flew down the parking lot, slammed on his brakes, rolled down his window, and this guy leaned out and he said, "That's really great. I'm so glad to see that you are setting an example for carrying open in Springfield, Missouri." I couldn't believe it. I wasn't really expecting quite that, but that's what happened. That's what happened. John, did you have something else you wanted to share with us?
No, I'm good. Get off fine.
Nice to hear from you, John.
Hey, good. Thanks a lot.
You too, Rick. Bye-bye.
It's John from Nixa, John Dollarhite. Yep. He and his wife were fined $6.19 million by the USDA for raising rabbits, and he told them to stuff it, and he won. Richard Allen Miller and I are going to be back. We're going to talk about Timothy Leary when we come back. Class, we're talking with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and I just realized that before we go into Timothy Leary and that discussion, Dr. Richard Allen Miller was a friend of Timothy Leary, and Timothy Leary was one of Dr. Richard Allen Miller's instructors. Before we go into that, Rick, you mentioned there's going to be a grid takedown. Now, I did some research during the break, and there are several posts that talk about the grid going down November 13th and 14th. And let me just read this. It says, there are very dark storm clouds gathering.
October 2nd is something else, yes.
Yeah, okay. There are very dark storm clouds gathering around the country and North America as a whole. Things are about to get dark, very dark, in just a few short weeks in November 13th and 14th, 2013. Okay, the lights are about to go out. Will the lights come back on? It depends on who you ask. Given the past behavior of those in power, it would behoove all of us to prepare for the fact that we could be living for an extended time or period without electricity. Now, Rick, I don't know if this is true. This is just something that I happen to find several posts about this on the internet. Now, it very well could be, that this is a rumor that got picked up from one point and arrived on several posts. Or it could, in fact, be true. I don't know. But if it is true, taking down the grid is a pretty serious thing, because there are people who are on life support machines. There are people who are in hospitals. There are people that absolutely cannot do without electricity. And then we have the electronic babysitters, the television that keeps people from rioting and causing mayhem on the streets. It keeps them inside amused. Rick, your thoughts?
I think our romance with electricity needs to be revisioned. I think that we are way too dependent on current like that. And really, it's so fragile that you really need to have some kind of game plan.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I can tell you what our game plan here is at the farm class. In the farm, we have some 12-volt deep cycle batteries. We have some solar powers. We have a small wind turbine. And I am scaling back our need for electricity to the absolute minimum. Now, we have a generator. It's a PTO-driven generator. And literally, if I wanted to power everything on the farm, I could hook this generator up to a tractor, a farm tractor, and I could run the generator powered by the farm tractor on a PTO shaft, and it will run the air conditioning. It'll run lights. It'll run a studio that I built. If I broadcast from the farm rather than another studio, I could broadcast from here. I could do all that. Dishwasher, refrigeration, all of it. But it's going to consume a gallon an hour or 3/4 of a gallon an hour, depending on the load, of diesel fuel. Now, would I want to use the diesel fuel for that, or would I rather use the diesel fuel in a diesel truck to go outside the farm, or would I rather use the diesel fuel for the tractor? Not knowing if I could get more diesel fuel, I would not want to run that generator any more than is absolutely necessary. So I would pump water,
my recommendation
store the water,
on that,
and shut it right
Vincent, is that you consider getting a Jack Daniel's skill, and you run everything off alcohol.
Yeah, there you go. Right, absolutely. And with the wood stove that we have in the
source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with the wood stove that we have that produces,
By the way,
smoke.
Your diesel and your automobile and all things like your generators that run off gasoline will efficiently run off alcohol with very minor, no expense modification. You change the tuning on it. That's all it's about.
So, Rick, this could be a very serious thing. It could be a solar flare that disrupts our power grid. It could be an attack on the power grid. It could be our government just shutting it off. It could be a darn accident, a mistake that could shut it down, and it could be a cascading event. So, Rick, just a thought. Do you want to talk a few minutes about that when we come back, or do you want to go right into Timothy?
Well, I think people are pretty well aware of what the seriousness of the grid collapse is about. I think the media is, yes. Anything you'd like to do, Vincent? I'm good. No, it's good. I'm good.
Okay, class, we're going to talk about Timothy Leary from a man who knows Timothy Leary well. Dr. Richard Allen Miller and I will be back. Timothy Leary, LSD, when it was legal. USAPrepares.com. Please don't touch that dial.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. All right, here we go. This is hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. By the way, during the top of the hour, you just heard the quote, guns and weapons should not be a part of the Starbucks experience. Well, okay, I'm with you. No Starbucks for Vinny. Nope, I'm not doing it. I will be boycotting Starbucks from now on. Not that I've ever been there, for 2 reasons. One, they're thwarting my ability to defend myself on their property, so I won't go there. And the other is, it's economic folly to spend that much for a cup of coffee. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and Dr. Richard Allen Miller is a friend, a former friend of Dr. Timothy Leary, who died in 1996. Now, more of his work is coming to light. Timothy Leary was considered the most dangerous man in America by President Richard Milhouse Nixon. Dr. Miller, let's talk about Timothy Leary. Who was Dr. Timothy Leary?
He was, I didn't know him real well. He was, I took my first legal hit of LSD in 1964 with him. He was my guide. And then I started to get to know him better and his philosophies, and the SMILE, the space migration, intelligence increase, longevity extension, was when he published his, in my opinion, seminal paper on neurologic circuits. It has affected my writings in terms of the holographic universe. I think that his concepts, he suggested that the brain has 8 primary neurotransmitters. There's others. It has 8 primary neurotransmitters that determine how information is stored in the brain. And these were what later are called memes, or group thought, if you will, like when you talk about something, is that a physical, emotional, intellectual, archetypal experience? That was all part of his modeling systems. He felt that LSD was an extremely valuable tool for use in therapy. He had come out in the 40s with the idea of, the psychology was not helping people. Basically, in the 40s, when they were using psychology on veterans and things like that, 1/3 of them got better, 1/3 of them remained the same, and 1/3 got worse. And that's why psychology through the 50s and the 60s was always considered a soft science. It wasn't real by real scientists. They poo-pooed psychology as being an illusionary misdirection of things. However, Stanislav Grof and others today are validly using LSD as a therapy for terminally ill, in helping them face the reality of impending death. A lot of people have fear of death and don't know what's going to happen and have a tremendous fear of it, like spiders or something like that. Mm-hmm. And if used in clinical situations, can be very beneficial, and is now proving so in multitudes of technical papers. Larry wrote another book, the one I think is possibly the most important book on magic written this century, called The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, how to use this ritual, the ritual uses of psychedelics for, how to integrate the experience rather than it being. And in that book, he said the Buddhists have 4 reasons for getting high, and only one of them was for recreation and escape, which is what drugs are mostly associated with right now. People use them, like alcohol, or even tobacco, as a form of escape. However, yesterday I read a very interesting article that would suggest that the single most dangerous drug in our society today is sugar.
That's what Dr. Norman Shealy says. Dr. Shealy said, I believe he said that yesterday.
Causing obesity and diabetes, and it's killing people.
Mm-hmm. So Rick, when people think of LSD, they think of these recurring adventures through the mind. Is that true?
You mean flashbacks? What are you talking about? Recurring?
Yes.
Yeah. No, flashbacks do not occur. That is a hype. Let me tell you what I do know. Lysergic acid amide is actually a neurotransmitter in your brain. And when you take lysergic acid diethylamide, which is slightly different, the body freaks out. And what happens is it produces its own neurotransmitter to counter the diethylamide. The LSD is broken down and into normal organic salts, inorganic salts, within 20 minutes of ingestion. It's in your bladder, in your urine. And the 20 hours of hallucinations are from your own body's production. That's why it's harmless in that sense of it. It is not a destructive thing. And what it basically does is it kickstarts your own body's production of that thing for those that aren't normally, prone to that. Now, what does lysergic acid amide do in the brain? It is the neurotransmitter that gives you that aha burst when you see or how to connect one dot to another. It is, in fact, the one that creates imagination. And imagination is possibly the only thing that's real. So the fear of flashbacks is an exaggerated excuse for someone to allow themselves to go psychotic. All of us have little breaks in our schisms, and it might be due to a mini stroke. It might be due to a thought that you had that you're not sure how to assimilate it into consciousness. And with that said, I took at one point in my life, by accident, a lethal dose of strychnine that had been put in the LSD, and I went to Harborview, where my heart stopped twice, and they had to paddle me once to bring me back because of the lethal dose of strychnine that I had taken. The only reason I survived is that I had snorted it because it had been made from a batch manufactured, and they were testing it on us to see what would happen, and I nearly died from it. And I have to tell you, the friend that I was with took half as much and ended out at Fairfax for 6 months with his brain scrambled going through so-called flashbacks. And really what that was his own body trying to somehow assimilate what this experience was all about. It's psychological. It was not about the drug itself. And so that's one of the reasons why LSD is not one of the big drugs in society, because it's easy to make, and anybody can do it, like pot. And I would say that marijuana and LSD are basically harmless. You can't function in our society while you're on that thing, but that is possibly a good example of how legislation, you'll notice it isn't like methamphetamine where criminals make a lot of money on it. LSD isn't a big criminal drug. It's more of an illegal drug, but it's not a criminal drug where the mafia or the various organized crime, bikers, whatever, are trying to make money on it. They make money on methamphetamine and heroin. And, the whole thing is skewed because sugar is our number one drug. That it's no regulation on that one. And then there's, going down the line, there's tobacco, alcohol. Let's not forget Prozac and antidepressant drugs that are illegal script given to children. The whole thing is wrong, and there is a very strong body of evidence to indicate that Leary was a pioneer in changing some of this stuff in trying to, make this a more therapeutic drug. The old schools of psychology weren't working. That's why he was exploring that.
Mm-hmm. Rick, we've got a caller, Michael from New York. Michael, you are on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and me, Vin Finelli.
Good morning, Vincent. Good morning, Dr. Richard.
Good morning.
Gentlemen, if you like, I can delve into this in quite detail. Timothy Leary, for example, I'm here in this area, Millbrook, New York, is where he started. I could give you some information, very interesting, pertaining to how all that came about through the Mellon Bank family. And the property was actually owned by them on the Hitchcock family side. And it was a...
Yeah, the Mellon family actually wanted to patron him because they felt he was onto something in terms of psychological therapy as a tool. I have friends in New York that are LSD therapists. I mean, that had done. He was one of the co-authors of Omni magazine, and is a clinical psychologist that uses LSD in therapy right there in New York City. And so Neil Goldsmith. And that's his name, Neil Goldsmith. And so, New York was a center for a lot of that. That was after that little toad, Andrew Will, got him kicked out of Harvard. I think that was in 1963.
There's another perspective to all that as well, sir.
Michael, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We'll bring you back on the other side of the break. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Michael from New York, LSD therapy. We'll be right back. We're talking with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Michael from New York is with us. And LSD was legal at one time. It was legal. And Michael, you were talking about some of the foremost names in industry and banking. Why don't you continue with your thoughts there?
Well, thanks, Vincent. I was friends with a lady named Aurora Hitchcock from Venezuela, and Timothy Leary was godfather to her daughter. And she was married to Billy Hitchcock, whose mom was a melon. And so the vast estate that Timothy Leary operated out of in Millbrook, where the drug culture was nucleated, it was owned by the Mellon family. Now, in the beginning, for sure, they were allowing Timothy Leary to operate there, and without anybody harassing them, the police, nothing. People were coming in. It was a mecca. Eventually, probably towards the end of the '60s, into the early '70s, it was a mecca, and I think right through the whole '70s, it really was. People were coming in like droves into Millbrook. And never got bothered by the police, law enforcement for the longest, many years, longest time. And then, after a long duration, then things changed, and he started getting harassed. So that tells me that this is part of Tavistock. They wanted to incubate the drug culture and then get it out into the public. Around the country, around the globe, and then at that point they started harassing, getting the law after them and stuff to serve their agenda. And so it looks like Timothy Leary was used in that way, and he's
that's a valid thought, by the way. I've also heard that. You know,
it sure seems that way, sir. You know. Based on everything I know, and he was a good guy. He really was, and he was on.
Well, he was intelligent. You know, when I it was Tana Wilson, Robert Anton Wilson's daughter, and I that were actually the ones that did the writ at Vacaville that got him released because he wasn't there. We did a writ of habeas corpus, and they couldn't produce the body, and that was illegal, and that's when they discovered they had moved him to Chicago. And really, when I saw him after Chicago, he was not the same person I had known and respected. He was still the same person, but it was like he was cored or something. I don't mean like, lobotomy, but he was different. He was not as intense and passionate about what he was doing. He was a different person. They had done something to him that was terrible.
They zapped him. They know how to, I don't know, it's an old... The term I'm familiar with is called tonal, T-O-N-A-L. They removed that. They know how to do that. They did it to the Native Americans, and they're doing it to us right now. The Americans today aren't really Americans because they're taking their tonal would be the term that's difficult to explain what it means, but you can get the gist from the way I use it in context. And you could say their spirit. They're taking their spirit out of them. And, regarding sugar, what you're saying is true as far as the refined garbage sugars.
There you go. That's correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you.
That's right. Not the whole sugars.
But
like honey,
all sugars,
maple syrup.
Yeah, but all sugars, even fructose and lactose sugars, so those sugars have a balance in our system, just like bacteria do. And when you overemphasize, and with soft drinks, my good gosh, do you know how much sugar is in a soft drink? I see that as the bane on what has actually brought America down, is sugar.
Yes,
Rick and Michael,
in that respect, but the whole sugars like pure honey, pure maple syrup, ripened fruits, not fruit.
Yeah, but you don't want your whole diet to be based around sugars, even the good ones. It's in moderation. That's what I was trying to suggest, that the amount of sugar that one takes in their diet today, good, bad, or ugly, is way more than what your body needs. Sugars are found even in vegetables, and yet you don't need to sprinkle sugar over them to make it more tasty. It's just,
Rick, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We're talking about Timothy Leary. And Michael from New York is with us, and he has a few more thoughts about Timothy Leary. And Timothy Leary experimented with LSD, and he's the guy who had promoted the philosophy, turn on, tune in, and drop out. And he's also the man that I believed who said that we could live to be 1,000 years old because we would have replacement parts available to us. He died before that happened. So, Michael, please continue.
Thank you, Vincent. And that's where Timothy just lost it, obviously, because he's no longer around. And that's not how immortality is ever going to come about. And with all his mind expansion, because that's really what LSD is, and similar kinds of quote-unquote drugs, they're technically having a mind-expanding effect on us. And the nature of reality is this. We're magical beings in a magical creation by an incredible being we call God, and the true God Almighty himself is, fortunately for us, extremely benevolent and good, merciful, kind, and all-loving. And he should have discovered all that as well. And then the key to immortality from such contact. And in the world we're in, our current state of mind, our normal active mind, our daily consciousness is minimized. And we have shields. It's like a reducing valve, because if we were in constant contact with the greater reality that we become aware of through expansion, it could freak a lot of people out, and it does. And that's why it could be used for everybody, sir, but it's highly not recommended unless those individuals are under total supervision, because some people handle alcohol good and some don't. And everything else, marijuana, some handle it good, some don't. And generally, most do handle it good, but it's those that don't. And this now is something super powerful, way beyond alcohol or marijuana. And people could kill themselves on it. And so you have to be careful for that. But it's very, God himself, number one, more than anything else, is power. And this is accessing us now by opening up our mind to this power, which is greatly reduced under normal awareness and consciousness. It puts us into a heightened state of awareness. And in the old days, like the Native Americans, they used magic mushrooms for battle. Because you're in a heightened state of awareness, you are really fearless, completely fearless.
And the Nazis did something similar also. Richard, what do you think?
And I did studies for the Navy with BZ gas and ketamine, telepathine. But Leary's concepts of longevity extension began with the idea that ergot is actually used to make, besides LSD, it makes your longevity drugs because they contain antioxidants. And that led Leary to believe that that was one of the directions. It was Kurzweil that came in with the countdown to singularity and the idea of transhumanism, where we can live forever, like in Ascension. That's a new Johnny Depp movie where there's a supercomputer that Johnny Depp is about to die, and he wants to save his soul and life, and so he implants it like in Free Jack into a computer for immortality. Immortality and ascension have many different faces to it, and Kurzweil is talking about doing it through technology. There are other things that can happen, and remember when I said this, the lysergic acid amide in the brain, or natural chemistry, is the chemistry that connects one dot to another. And the most important thing to remember is connecting dots is arbitrary. In other words, imagination is reality, and anything that you can comprehend or conceive is probable, or is possible. And if it's possible, that's Merlin. It's probable.
Mike, I want to thank...
That's absolutely correct. But when it comes to the path of immortality, there's a natural, organic way which the good Lord Jesus the Christ himself taught, but they don't want to see that, and it's all deleted from at least the main Gospels, and it's through Mother Nature. And typically, like most of the time, it should be discovered, especially through mind expansion, when you tap the power, that you're put on the path of power that'll lead you down that path of organic living, totally in harmony with Mother Nature. You keep the body like a temple, and it's perpetual on its own. Man doesn't die. The mortals kill themselves. We're immortal by design, and it isn't...
Well, yeah, and the concepts of ascension would suggest that death is actually a form of waking up. Because, in fact, that's why genealogy and the idea of ancestral memory and past lives are so critical in all of the philosophies of things in magic, like Aleister Crowley called that your magical memory, being able to remember what you were here to do in the first place. It's interesting.
Michael, I want to thank you for the call. Thanks so much for being with us. Rick, I've got a question for you about jumping Off buildings. Here's where I'm going with that. Rick, there are stories that have made it to the news where people taking LSD have climbed to the top of a building. They think they're jumping into a swimming pool, and they're just going for a dive, and they end up committing suicide. Can you address that?
Yes. The previous guest said, there are people that handle things differently, and you can count the people that have done that on one hand compared to how many people have taken LSD and had no problem at all. And when used clinically, that's a different matter. The last point I want to make on this is, how many people have you seen be violent on marijuana or LSD? And then I ask, how about methamphetamine and heroin or alcohol?
Rick, there's no debate.
How many people do you see overreacting, not leaping off a building, but becoming violent because they're drunk? Now, what I'm going to say is, there is in all of us self-destruction, and whether or not it made you do it, or you had a purchase to do it and it lowered the edge, like alcohol does, where you don't have the inhibitions that you might otherwise have in place. For me, I see alcohol and tobacco and sugar as the main scourges of our society with GMOs. GMOs are not natural. And he made a point about the natural forms of biology. And I can make a whole talk on that because of the difference between hybridization and how we would experiment with certain kinds of seeds over centuries. That is not gene manipulation. And anybody, including Monsanto, and today, Scientific American came out. Do you want to boycott something? Boycott Scientific American for selling out to their advertisers in terms of the importance of GMOs. Scientific American is actually advocating that it's good for us. I can't believe it.
Man.
That came from my webmaster, Mahala Marshall Root. I have to tell you, the whole thing is nuts. We are in the dark ages of darkest ages, and we need to, it's a personal thing. And everybody has their own limitations and restrictions. I don't drink. I don't like to drink. Why? I don't like to be clumsy. And while I feel really good when I've had a couple of beers in me, I don't want to be stupid. Now,
Rick, okay.
LSD is the same thing. It opens doors and it closes other doors, and you have to be very careful with all of this kind of thing. And I notice there's absolutely no restrictions on sugar. Watch what happens when a kid drinks a soda pop. They become like jumping jack flash, like a pinball, ricocheting off everything.
Yeah, Rick, during the 1960s and 70s, we're talking about Timothy Leary. He saw the inside of 29 different prisons.
Yeah.
And he's been arrested a lot. I remember.
From a social point of view, not doing something dangerous to mankind. His danger was like where they have Church of the Virus, where an idea becomes viral. It's like a spreading virus, and it changes the landscape of beliefs out there. And that's why Leary was dangerous, because he was promoting and advocating a new concept that the powers that run and control this universe didn't have control of.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was promoting questioning authority, and I remember when I was at the university in the 1970s, question authority, and I'll tell you what, they didn't like it. They wanted us to be good little sheep.
Losing control. That's the whole issue of why he became so dangerous. He would advocate the fact that you need to question these things and not just be obedient and accepting. And that's one of the things that I will remember him by, and what was so important in his contribution to man.
Now, he was appointed to West Point, the United States Military Academy at West Point. And you've got to be pretty bright, and you have to be well-connected
to get
a free...
That's what I wanted to say. He was... Why I respected him, he was one of my teachers. I was very fortunate to have a man like that be able to open certain kinds of doors of questioning. And that's why he got kicked out of West Point. He wasn't a rat. He wasn't B.S. Stearley. And that was the so-called honor code. Look, his story is got several sides to each issue. And that's the whole point of it. It was about he was a danger to the infrastructure of powers at bay. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. We're talking about Timothy Leary and with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And we got a call during the break, and it seems to be a lot of interest in this cell phone company that I work with, and our USAPrepares.com instructor, Roy Birdsong of Choose Your Own Wireless, right here in Springfield, Missouri. And people want anonymous cell phones, like with names like Marilyn Monroe and Garth Brooks. And if you want Anthony Soprano to be your cell phone name, you won't be the first. But let me give you his phone number if you want to call Roy Birdsong at the store, 417-823-3715, 417-823-3715. One more time, 417-823-3715. Rick, we have Mark from Philadelphia on the line with us. Mark, please go ahead.
My seat again, Vince. Every time Dr. Richard Allen Miller's on here, I'm telling you, it's like the more I listen, the more questions I want to ask. It's like living on the edge of the reef where all the life and curiosity just keeps coming and coming. Anyway, what came to me as I was listening, because I just was able to catch the last 20 minutes of your show here, Dr. Miller, the Tarahumara Indians that live in Mexico, who live a long, long life, and they live pretty much disease-free, and they can run 100 miles a day. What is up with the Tarahumara Indians?
Well, Gordon Lawson wrote about that, the sacred mushroom. And so there is, strong evidence regarding antioxidants, which is what psychotropics are, psychedelics, and psychoactive materials. And really, it's about kick-starting your own production in the body. When you take these different kinds of psychoactive materials, they're generally considered toxins, and the body overreacts by producing its own chemistry that's native in the body. And when you do that and you have a lifestyle that's around something like that, there's way many other evidences. Weedy of the Fang that did iboga and the ibogaine, that stops all forms of addiction. I mean, there's drugs out there that are not being studied because drug dealing and drug dependency is a big market with pharmaceutical houses and all the related associated crime that goes around it, law enforcement and all. And so it's like, why would you want to stop heroin addiction in Brooklyn?
Right.
It just doesn't pencil out. And so I don't have the answers on that particular tribe, but I think the answer lies in why they do what they do and the kinds of foods they're eating.
Yeah, my understanding is that they eat chia seed, which has been around.
Well, chia, yeah, I'm eating chia seed. That's that's omega-3s and some of the other things that it does in reducing cholesterol. By the way, my cholesterol was 150, and my goal in the next 4 months is to bring it down to 100. And the way I'm going to do that is cut out at least half of my meat, eat lots of chia seed, and more fiber.
I'm just curious if it is are the hallucinogenics, are they part of their culture there as part
I believe they are, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you can find Imboden and Richard Evans Schultz and several others that have talked about that Tom Lytle he's dead now, had a journal called Psychedelic Essays and Monographs where they had several articles on that tribe. Yeah.
The other thing that comes to me is that they also consume agave. Now, they consume agave in the form of agave beer, not in tequila, but agave beer, which they brew themselves, and they seem to be a pretty happy-go-lucky kind of...
Well, I went out once and collected agave flowers to turn my tequila blue, rather than the worm. The doom. I'm an alchemist, so who knows?
Mark, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, pleasure.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller, it's always great to be with you. Now, class, if you'd like to purchase some of his books, go to oak-publishing.com. That's oak-publishing.com, oak-publishing.com. Or you can go to richardallenmiller.com. His website is being rebuilt as we speak. Richard, A-L-A-N